So our next evaluator is going to be Dan, and he's going to be evaluating Joanne. And so let's welcome Dan so he can tell us what he's going to be doing today.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Joanne will be delivering the first speech from the evaluation and feedback project of level 1, and her path is motivational strategies. I have no idea what this will be about because it can be about anything really. And I'll be looking for 2 basic things. This comes from actually the content of the evaluation sheet for this. First one is organization. So there's an expectation that this be a well-organized speech. And the second is that she display very adequate, engaging elements of style. And we all know what those are. Now, beyond that, Joanne, of course, is a very experienced speaker. And every time I've been hearing her speak, I've been really captivated by what she talks about. That's my real expectation. And that's what I really look forward to. And once she wows me with her speech, I'll spend a little bit of time, decompose it, and present the evaluation to everyone. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dan. So our next speaker is Joanne. The title of her speech, again, I don't know if Dan said it, but it's Finding Your Path. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you. I was driving up Monterey Road. It was about 15 years ago. And I was with my daughter driving her to one of her mini swim meets when I got one of those dreaded calls. Hello, this is San Jose Medical Center. We have Jeremy here. Are you driving? Yes, I said. Oh, well, he's here just as a precaution. He was like working with a hose and like a little tree branch fell on him. And we're just here to see if he's okay as a precaution. All these years later, I'm really amazed at how quickly my brain went into denial. I think your brain prepares you for what you could handle. At that time, Jeremy, my son, was 22 years old, and he was a firefighter for the California Department of Forestry. I, though, imagined that he was outside the firehouse with a little garden hose watering some flowers, and a little tree branch just went on him, and they took him to the ER because they're just overcautious. I think in my imagination, there was even soft music in the background. I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this little volunteer thing with my daughter, and I'll be down in an hour. Is that okay? She said, they're doing a CAT scan now. I think you should get down here. And reality started to set in. When I got to the hospital, they told me to sit and wait because they were working on Jeremy. And soon I saw a firefighter come out in a white shirt, and I knew the white shirts were the supervisor guys or the battalion chiefs. So I quickly ran after him. My daughter said, "Mom, you're embarrassing me." It's funny what embarrasses a 15-year-old. And Nick, the battalion chief, said Jeremy was working a fire and a branch from way up high had fell off or broke off and shot out like a bullet. And Jeremy and the other firefighters had dropped their hoses and started running, and Jeremy's arm was back and it had hit his arm, and the tree had also clipped his helmet, and that's why they were doing a CAT scan. But basically he was okay. I went into the room where they had Jeremy, and nurses were running all around yelling, "We have a firefighter, we have a firefighter." And Jeremy was all bandaged up and obviously drugged. He said, "Mom, I got to ride in a helicopter." Soon a doctor took me in another room and showed me an array of x-rays and said he had a severe break in his arm and it would require surgery and a pin inserted. I nodded. And I went outside and called my mom. First thing she asked me was, "Joanne, is that doctor an orthopedic surgeon?" "I don't know," I said. still in a daze. Soon I was introduced to the Brotherhood of Firefighters. It's like entering into a whole new culture. Nick, the battalion's chief, sat with me throughout the whole surgery. Nick had a lot of good stories to tell. In fact, I remember him today, and he should be a Toastmaster. He said, when I started firefighting, it's not like it is today. I'm 6'4", and my firefighting suit was too short. It came up to here on my arm. I'd come in from a fire and my arms would be all red. I had to fight to get suits that fit me. I'm glad you got the suits, I said, but I was thinking, gee, I wonder if Jeremy's okay. He said, not only that, the beds were too short for me. I'd fight a 14-hour fire and come in and my legs would be hanging over the side. I couldn't even sleep. I had to fight to get extra long beds for people like me. I'm glad you got him, I said, but I was wondering, does the doctor know where I am? And to make it worse, they fed us soggy hamburgers. Could you believe that? We're gonna have an appetite fighting a fire all day and all you get is a soggy hamburger. I had to fight to get an extra food allowance for my crew. That's wonderful, I said, but I was wondering, I wonder if something's wrong. Where's the doctor? Soon the doctor came in and surgery had went okay. He said the recovery would be long and Jeremy would lose a lot of muscle mass. And then after that, I was introduced to the Brotherhood of the Firefighters Part 2. The next day, the head of the Firefighters Union for the whole state of California came to visit, and he was very accommodating, offering to send firefighters to my house to help me out or get me a hotel room to sleep in, anything. And he said Jeremy would be paid a salary until he recovered. And then a steady stream of firefighters visited Jeremy from all over the state, and they continued to visit and when he got home. Jay Shetty is a popular social media host, and also he just wrote a book called Think Like a Monk, and he's actually trained like a monk to be a monk. And he said, sometimes the challenges in our life or things we see as negative lead us to what we're meant to be. Well, Jeremy had never read a book before unless it was assigned. And he read his first book just because he wanted to. It was the Da Vinci Code. Also, he started studying nutrition because he was afraid of gaining weight when he couldn't work out. And he got so interested in it that he went back to college and he got a degree in it. And that's the field he works in today. I'm not saying you should go out and break your arm so you could find out where you're meant to be. But Jay Shetty also says that sometimes we need to, when we reach a goal, we need to think back to everything we went through to get there. And sometimes those negative things will take on a more positive light. And of course, I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for firefighters. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Joanne. That was a great speech. Everybody's focusing on positive, on being positive, laughing, being positive as far as like not get stuck in the negative and try and get in, grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and do a minute for Joanne, so we can give her some feedback.
Now I will call on Dan to give the evaluation for Joanne.
Joanne, this was a fabulous speech. Really was. I'm sure you're aware of that. It's hard to imagine someone giving such a good speech and not being aware that they did a really fantastic job. But I really loved it. And I loved it right from the get-go. You were extremely clever with that introduction. In that one introduction, you tell a little story, you pull us into your own mindset, and you play this really cute little trick on us, but it was the same trick, it seems, that was being played on you mentally, which was when you hear this story, and when I heard this story at first, I thought, wow, that sounds like a little kid getting beat up by a garden hose. and you were mentioned that this flashed through your mind, and I was like wondering, okay, what's the point of this? I'm sure we'll find out pretty quickly. And then it just kind of hit us all, and as it hit you, and again, you were just pulling us into your mindset while being funny at the same time. And it just was so effective. It was a fantastic introduction. Now, an introduction like that, you'd say, wow, that's going to be the highlight of this speech. And after that, it's all going to be downhill. But man, that wasn't at all. You just kept that energy flow all throughout the speech. And you brought up so many interesting points, so many contrasts. It's hard to not believe that you learned quite a bit from, for example, listening to Chris talking about storytelling and presenting all these ideas about creating contrast and tension, things like that, things that he just talked about. But you did that fabulously. And there were just so many aspects of this speech where really it was two things. There was like either double entendres that you were bringing up, or just simply a backstory in contrast with the primary story, or just wonderful opinions that you sprinkled throughout. For example, mentioning about how there's such a brotherhood among firemen, and that came out during the surgery episode with your son. And even that surgery episode, that's when the whole speech took a little bit more of a serious turn, but it did not take a somber turn. You handled that just beautifully. When you reenacted the conversation with that fireman, your gestures, I noticed your gestures, that whole dialogue that you presented was just done classically in terms of just being a pro at presenting that kind of dialogue, that conversation, with all the animation, with all the gestures, all of that. It was just fabulous to behold. And with all of that, you took it right up to the end. Well, that's almost to the end. Just one little thing that I would suggest, because it's really hard to find fault with anything in this speech. It was a fantastic speech. The one thing I would suggest would just simply be, it looks like you petered out about 2 seconds early. I don't know what it was. It was sort of like the energy just sort of collapsed just 2 seconds early. That's the only thing I could mention that I would say, next time you give a speech like this, or this speech, just take it right that final 2 seconds to the end. It'll be perfect. You might want to think about even using this speech in a contest, in the International Speech Contest. It's really that good. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Dan. That was a great evaluation.